Mahavir ki jai, Shishi Bodhitai ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi.
Hare Bo.
Hare Krishna. So Jonah already kind of gave a little introduction to me. Thank you, Jonah, for that. I also want to wish Prabhu Prabhu now happy birthday, but also introduce another sometimes guest, now important part of our temple management team, which is Bhanu Gopal Prabhu, seated directly in front of me here. Some of you may know that, just real briefly, the structure is, we have our governing body commission and different members, as Jonah said, oversee different temples and areas of the world. And then within the last few years, an additional position has been created by the GBC, which is called Zonal Supervisor. The purpose for that is so as the movement expands, decision was made that the model is have about maybe 40 GBC members, which means as we grow, let's say tomorrow there's 1,000 temples, and each GBC member would have to look after whatever 30, 40 temples, which isn't practical. So then they create a position called Zonal Supervisor. So Bhanu Gopal Prabhu is the newly appointed Zonal Supervisor for Harrisburg Temple and Baltimore Temple and Philadelphia Temple. So it means he'll be assisting Balabhadra, oversight as the president, oversight of Dronacharya as the vice president, all the other departments and all of that. And basically, though we never talked about this as part of his job description, if I really screw up, then he has to go tell all the GBC that you got to deal with it right away. So if anybody has any complaints, you can talk to him about me, he'll take care of that. But he's based in New Jersey. He also is the communications director for North America. ISKCON, many of you know, we have this tendency, because we're a pioneering movement, we are growing in a lot of ways. So there's a tendency of people to take on a lot of tasks at one time. So he's also one of the leaders in New Jersey in the Parsippany Temple that's being built. What the Toronto community is growing into that place. And any of you have seen I've been there to visit or seen some of the videos of the temple coming up. It's really exciting. Same way devotees are watching us and cheering for Philadelphia for many years to see our temple come up. So now we're waiting to see the New Jersey temple come up there in Parsippany. So he's also very active in that. So he's a busy guy. Best time to call him if you have any questions for him. Like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, you definitely get him. Other times of the day, I can't guarantee that he's free. Okay? Is there something I can just raise the book up a little bit on here? If not, I can fake it. Is that little stand next to the harmonium? Does that do anything? Yeah. How about that? That's what do we put on there? That wooden one. It's not for anything non-sacred, right?
No.
I think that'll work. Maybe turn it the other direction. Okay, great. Hi. This should be now we get a system for you now. All the talk guys. Actually, many of you may not know this, but there's a few austerities that tall people have to play. Actually, this is too tall, so I think I need the other thing here. Vishnu Gadan, I know, anytime you fly in an airplane, the seats don't fit. That's one of the austerities that we have to go. And also, anytime there's something at a high elevation, everybody expects that we should serve them and get it down, which is nice for Vaishnavas to become a servant. And also just mention, because he's too humble, he probably never tells anybody this, but if you ever invite Vishnu Gadar or myself to your home, or any other tall person, keep in mind we're the only ones that see what's on the top of your refrigerator. So we'll warn you, before we come, get out the step stool, clean it out, because otherwise, it's tough, isn't it? Vishnu Gadar was like,
It's hard to control yourself here.
You have to control your senses, Attraction, repulsion, all of those kind of things, because actually it's the fact that we sometimes see things that no other human eye has seen for years, decades perhaps, and so it's one of the tapashas of being tall. Okay, so I was assigned this verse, 413. Are we actually going like one verse at a time on Sunday feast again now, or
no? The important verse is something.
Okay, so there was a selection made. So important verse 413. I'll read the Sanskrit one, and you can just listen. We won't do the repetition. I think we'll just go ahead and repeat. Actually, it is up there, so maybe we can repeat it. Okay. Chaturvarnyamaya Shristam
Chaturvarnyamaya Sristam
Gunakarma Vibhagashaha
Gunakarma Vibhagashaha
Tasya Kartaram Apimam
Tasya Kartaram Apimam
Vidyakartaram Avyayam.
Vidyakartaram.
Translation. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me, Lord Krishna says. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet a non-doer, being unchangeable. Is English up there now too?
Yes.
So let's all say it in unison. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them,
The four divisions of human society
created by me.
and although I am the creator of the system, you should know that I am yet a non-doer, being unchangeable.
Okay. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The Lord is the creator of everything. Everything is born of Him. Everything is sustained by Him. And everything after annihilation rests in Him. He is therefore the creator of the four divisions of the social order, beginning with the intelligent class of men, technically called Brahmanas, due to their being situated in the mode of goodness. Next is the administrative class, technically called the Kshatriyas, due to their being situated in the mode of passion. The mercantile men, called Vaishyas, are situated in the mixed modes of passion and ignorance, and the Sudras, or laborer class, are situated in the ignorant mode of material nature. In spite of his creating the four divisions of human society, Lord Krishna does not belong to any of these divisions, because he is not one of the conditioned souls, a section of whom form human society. Human society is similar to any other animal society, but to elevate men from the animal status, the above-mentioned divisions are created by the Lord for the systematic development of Krishna consciousness. The tendency of a particular man towards work is determined by the modes of material nature he has acquired. Some symptoms of life, according to the different modes of material nature, are described in the 18th chapter of this book. A person in Krishna consciousness, however, is above even the Brahmanas. Although Brahmanas by quality are supposed to know about Brahman, the supreme absolute truth, most of them approach only the impersonal Brahman manifestation of Lord Krishna. But a man who transcends the limited knowledge of a Brahmana and reaches the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, becomes a person in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, a Vaishnava. Krishna consciousness includes knowledge of all different plenary expansions of Krishna, many of whom are pictured on the back wall there, namely Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, etc. And as Krishna is transcendental to the system of the four divisions of human society, a person in Krishna consciousness is also transcendental to all divisions of human society, whether we consider the divisions of community, nation, or species. Namo Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurava Vicharane Nirvishesha Shinvari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So it's nice to see a lot of our temples. And we've been having lectures all the time through COVID, and just darshan and then take prashad home.
Starting back in last spring, we started the in-person Sunday feast. So we've been going about 9 months now.
Through that time, because some of the other temples.
Before then, it was online.
Vrindavan's been pretty much steady the whole time. Washington D.C. was doing everything outside for a long time, and just started having the programs inside. So I was able to give a class there a couple weeks ago. It was like kind of a new experience, like getting back used to it again. But I was seeing here so many faces that I recognized. I was thinking that kind of get a pulse, and I'm not going to do this, but ask, how long people coming. I looked around the room. I thought, okay, so ask people, how many of you have been coming for more than 50 years, right? Like work down from there, A lot of a lot of long-time Vaishnavas here. So in that mood, I think more we discuss, as Krishna explains the Gita, devotees, we discuss about him amongst each other. It's not so much that we, give a talk to each other, but we discuss and try to share some insights hopefully that Krishna Prabhupada shared with us. So this 4th chapter, I wanted to put things a little bit in context here of this verse, because it's interesting. There's nothing, let's see. Let's say nothing or not much. Yeah, there's not much before this verse about this particular topic, and there's not much about this verse. So it's kind of like Krishna throws in this concept of how he's created divisions, 4 divisions of human society in the midst of a whole other topic. And that topic is, as the chapter is entitled, Transcendental Knowledge. So in the beginning, Krishna is explaining, in the beginning of this chapter, Krishna is explaining where knowledge comes from. And he talks about the Parampara system, and he talks about he instructed the knowledge to the sun god. From there it went down to Manu, etc. He talks about the Parampara system that's established. And then he says that I'm teaching you because you're my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore you can understand the mystery. And then Arjuna kind of like has a little doubt that goes, wait a minute, but how, the sun god's seen you here. How is it you're saying you explained it to him? So then Krishna begins explaining, actually many, many verses you and I have undergone, and I remember all of them. That's my unique position. And then a series of very famous verses I'll just read, because it really is the essence of this chapter. The Lord says, although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, by my internal energy, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So this is a chapter of transcendental knowledge. What's that knowledge beyond the ordinary? And the Lord's saying that everything's coming from me. And then why is he here? Next verse, 4:7. Whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice, O descendant of art, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Next verse. To deliver the pious, again, why he comes, to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. And then he goes back to this special topic, knowledge. One who knows this about my appearance, the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities, does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode. So this whole chapter is in that context. Krishna is explaining what is real knowledge, what is transcendental knowledge. He helps Arjuna overcome this doubt about, well, how can you be the source of all that? And explains his supreme nature. And then in the 12th verse, just before what we read today, he kind of quickly throws in again quite a different topic, but interesting. Men in this world, after explaining about transcendental knowledge and being beyond this, he says, men in this world, he describes them in one verse, men in this world describe success and fruit of activities. And therefore they worship the demigods. Quickly, of course, men get results from fruit of work in this world. And then tonight's verse, then he says, according to the modes of nature, people are inclined to different types of work. But you should know that I created that too. And then again, he doesn't spend a whole lot of time in that, because the very next verse, then he talks about all the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of Krishna, so you should act in the same way. So like this whole discussion about how human society is divided is very much kind of a sub category of this broader picture of understanding who Krishna is, what our relationship is with him, and how we should act if we're in knowledge. And then, of course, later on in the same chapter, a very famous verse, he says, if you really want knowledge, you need to approach a guru. And then he says, 4:35, and if you've actually understood transcendental knowledge, you know that every living entity is a part of me, and I'm the source. Again, reaffirms that. And then at the end of the chapter, just to conclude this 4th chapter, see where he takes it all around to Arjuna after going through all this analysis of knowledge. He comes back and says, therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance. So he's talking about what is knowledge and what is ignorance. And he says, concluding this chapter, the doubts which have arisen out of ignorance should be slashed with the weapon of knowledge. And then what's he saying? Armed with yoga, or obard, stand and fight. And of course, you know, the Bhagavad Gita was not just spoken to Arjuna, but Krishna used that opportunity to reestablish, as he says in the beginning of this chapter, this knowledge to be handed down for us today. So of course, we're not necessarily standing in the middle of a battlefield. We have our own battles in a different context, but he's telling us that we also should be armed with knowledge and then stand and fight or perform our duties, whatever they may be, according to the different modes of material nature, whatever our inclination may be. You know, sometimes even within our devotee community, you meet a devotee who, remember in DC there was a devotee who drove taxis, and every year you could tell was there every Sunday because his taxi cab was there when they used to, before all the different services that are there now. And he always had his taxi cab with the sign on top. And there were other people in the congregation that are professors of statistics, and other people that are elementary school teachers, and other people that are, you probably don't have any of these people in the Philadelphia congregation. We had one or two people who are IT specialists. Probably don't have any of those folks here in this community. But there's a whole diversity, array of things that we do, but Krishna's explaining, so whatever your particular line of work is, so to speak, do that for me. But he's telling Arjuna, because you have doubts, therefore there's a lot of problems. So this concept of doubt, it's a very big one, and this is actually the nature of this whole world. Everybody has doubts. So it's a fearful place. I would say I'm becoming more fearful. These people are becoming like a little more crazy in the way they're driving. So Krishna's explaining here that it's the nature of this world, and the reason at the core that people are having doubts and having fears is because there's a real doubt. We're not even sure like who we are. Like sometimes you meet people that are so philosophically inclined, and you may say, "Well, do you know who you are?" They say, "Yeah, I'm a white woman, and I live in the suburbs of Los Angeles, and I'm a graphic designer." And if you ask, you say, "Well, why are you a white woman?" Like, okay, we know you have white parents, or brown, or black, whatever. Just an example. Like, do you know why you're in that position? You know, it's like, well, I never thought about that. You know, so the whole question of like, when we say, you know, do you know who you are, where you're from, where you're going to go? People don't know. So these doubts lead, it's the underlying concern that causes people a lot of anxiety. I was remembering today, years and years and years ago, when I was a brahmachari in the temple in Denver, and in those days we used to distribute a lot of Prabhu's books in the airports, and I remember one day, I don't think I've told this story before, I was standing where we would meet people, and it was at the bottom of an escalator. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, there was this blood-curdling scream, like I think I've ever heard before in life. And the whole hundreds of people just froze. And everybody's kind of like looking around, where's that scream coming? Like, is the roof collapsing? Is there a plane coming through the building? Is there like they didn't have many of those days, but what do they call it when there's a shooter? Is there like a mass shooter loose? Right? And everybody's looking around. And literally froze. And what happened was there was a little girl coming down the escalator, and she got her shoe stuck in the escalator. I don't think she was hurt, but she was scared pretty badly. And she screamed so loudly, as I said, everybody froze. And within about 4 or 5, no more than 10 seconds, people kind of like, what is that noise? Scared to death. Oh my gosh, it's coming from there. Oh, it's a little girl. Oh, her daddy's there now. Everything's okay. Keep going. Like, wash it out in memory. But in the background, you can see like how unsecure is our position that just a little warning signal like that. So there's this sense of fear is there. And Krishna's explaining why is that padam yadvi padam, that this material world is a dangerous place. You know, when you drive home tonight, I pray Krishna protects all of us this year, next year, for another 50 years of driving. But as you drive home tonight, I guarantee at least a few of us are going to see somebody take some very dangerous decisions in the way they're driving. And because it's a dangerous place. And therefore there's an anxiety in the back of the mind, will the next crisis be my crisis? Like we all know, those of us that work in the professional world, you all know some company that closed over the last couple of years because the bottom fell out of their market. So there's always anxiety, is that going to happen to me, to my company? Or many of us know we've had the experience in the office where, you know, the pink slips go out and that side of the office gets fired. There was something recently in the news about don't remember the company, somebody like fired, what, 2,000 people online? There was like a whole global, or at least national uproar. How can you treat people like that? And they had to back off and pop. We're really sorry we fired you that way. We should have done it with a smile. You're fired. Now you feel better, right? So that causes a lot of anxiety. So therefore, the Gita says that that this ignorance of who we really are and where real security comes from, which is discussed in a few minutes, that's actually the source of all of people's anxiety. And there's this expression, which is so funny, that ignorance is bliss. Right? We've all heard that. How is ignorance bliss? Ignorance is only bliss if you're ignorant of what's coming and you think the best way to avoid it is to hide. Isn't it? I think that's another reason why the roads are more dangerous, because now there's like a whole other, it's a whole new industry of intoxicants that formerly was illegal, but now it's legal, which means it's just that many more people who are driving on the road. Used to be drunk, now they're stoned even more. So one more level of danger. So what is that all about? Sadly, it's all about the world's kind of a tough place. It's kind of a miserable place. Let me dull myself so I can get through it. I worked in a factory one year when I was going to college. And there was a whole bunch of guys that used to come to work every time stoned, and then they get, they go and have some drinks during lunch, because that was like how they got through it. Because their lives were like actually pretty miserable. And just like, it's so funny, right? Happy hour. It's so funny. Happy hour. Like when you leave work so stressed that you can't go home in a peaceful frame of mind. Stop and make yourself a little dull, right? Enter it. I worked as a bartender, the Lord knows. It's my last job. Like, go in some dark place with the lights are turned down low, and dull your senses further so you can cope with life. So that's why this ignorance is bliss. But Krishna's saying, no, bliss comes from knowledge. But what is that knowledge? Well, the knowledge is not how to just make more money, because no matter how much you have, you're going to want more. Knowledge, of course, is wonderful things. We thank and offer our prayers and appreciation for those people that help cure the diseases that we face. But we always know as soon as you cure one, there's another one. Yeah. Always. The diseases that killed our grandparents, maybe they're gone now, but we got new ones that they never heard of. So that danger is always there. So therefore, Krishna advises that to really get the solution, we have to come to knowledge to deal with all these challenges that are there. And ultimately, what is that knowledge? As he's explaining, everything comes from him. And at the end of the 5th chapter, he sums it up nicely. He says that God, or Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is the controller of everything, he's the enjoyer of everything, and he's the best friend. And Prabhupada explains that's the peace formula. That's actually how we become peaceful and free from the doubts and free from the stress that people are facing. That if we know that actually Krishna is in charge, just like today, one with the devotees on book distribution a few hours ago. And I hadn't really gone on book distribution for quite some time. And it took me about an hour to remember that actually you're not in control. Like, you don't have to worry, I don't know if I have it together enough to convince this person to take a book. It's like, well, it's not my job to convince a person to take one of Prabhupada's books. My job is to present Prabhupada's books and see what magic Krishna works out. And as soon as I started thinking like that, is Sean still here? Sean was here, well. Sean's great. Sean just has this natural ability just to connect with people. But I was feeling all kinds of tension, well, how do I approach him? How do I approach her? I don't know if I know how to do it. Hana was saying, right, she came and said, what's your narrative? I said, well, I'm supposed to have a narrative. I don't have a narrative. But then as soon as I started thinking, actually, Krishna, these people are your parts and parcels. I'm just going to say, excuse me. And it's interesting, some people go, oh, what is it? Right, Sean? And some people go, get out of here. And then there's a few people in the middle that, people like Sean are very sincere, can kind of break the ice. So that requires a little bit of practice. Ballabhadra is an expert at it. But, so remembering that Krishna's actually in control, and Krishna's actually enjoyer, and whatever I do, if I do it with sincerity, then he's going to accept. Right? Bhagavad Gita, if you offer the Lord just a flower or a little bit of water, he accepts it. There's some devotion there. And Prabhupada comments over and over again, All of us can offer a flower. All of us can offer some water to the Lord. So we're not disqualified from anything. And that's such an essential message. That is just like this is transcendental knowledge. That is transcendental knowledge. That is transformative knowledge. Because we live in a world, in this society, modern day, you are what you wear. You are what you drive. You are where you live. You are what your face looks like. You know, you are what your belly looks like, you know, and cut and tuck and paste and everything else. People spend a lot of money. I think it's like billion-dollar industries, you know, how to look better. Why? Well, they say, you know, one hand you feel better. There's a funny joke, devotee, just remembering. HG Prabhu in D.C. tells this joke that there was a woman, she was in the hospital, and she got over her disease, and she was like praying to God, and God helped cure her. She said, God, how much more time do I have? And he said, you got another 25 years. She said, wow, 25 years, that's good. I'm gonna make sure I like enjoy it to the full. So she went and she had like a facelift and this and that and so many things, and made herself look really good. So as she's walking out of the clinic, she got hit by a car. And she got killed. So when this is a story, okay, the reaction sounded like it was true. This is just a joke. So she got hit by a car and she died. And when she died, she thought, wait a minute, God told me I had 25 years. So she went to heaven and she said, Lord, I want to see God right now. We had a contract. So she goes to see God and she says, God, what happened? You told me I had 25 years. And he took a look and he said, is that you? I didn't know that was you, girl. So we can make this adjustment, that adjustment, but there's always, you know, there's a concern about who am I doing it for? If we remember I'm doing it for Krishna, I'm doing it for God, He's my best friend, He's the controller, He's enjoying it, then it brings about His promises, brings about a peacefulness. And otherwise, and here's where the big part of the stress comes in the world today. If I'm meant to enjoy this world, if you just do the math, you're all either my friends or most of you my competitors. Because, you know, if my country does well, then, I mean, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. You know, I'm driving up here yesterday from Washington, D.C. I'm thinking, okay, I think now we're going through where Powhatan's tribes lived. Okay, now we're crossing this river. I think such and such a tribe lived there 400 years ago. And if you go that way, another tribe lived, another tribe. Different estimates vary, but they say approximately 55 million Native American people died either of warfare or disease when the Europeans came. Those of you from India, you don't carry any of this collective karma in your genes, but those of us of European origin, that's what my ancestors did. In the name of progress. I mean, that's pretty heavy. I was in Russia a few years ago, which to me, raised as an American, I'm thinking like, wow, this is Russia. This is like where all the communists are. This is where this is the land of atheism, and they kind of mistreated the serfs. And, you know, there's wonderful Vaishnavas there. It's a great country. They have a lot of beautiful things. They're so poetic, and they've done so much scientific advancement and all that. But I was saying there's a lot of negativity, and I was talking to a devotee friend about, you know, as an American, we're kind of conditioned to not really think a whole lot of good things about Russians. And this devotee said, well, you know what they tell us about Americans? I said, what's that? She said, your country was founded on killing the natives and enslaving the blacks. It's like, whoa. Whoa. You know, my whole false ego of like being American went down about 100-fold. Now, why was there a sense of we are entitled to this land, to this place, to the gratifications? Where was that sense of entitlement came from? Krishna explains it comes from thinking, I'm the enjoyer, I'm the controller. And even Prabhupada heard a lecture recently, Prabhupada saying we shouldn't even think we're the best friend. We can't be everybody's best friend. But if I'm actually understanding, you know, this earth is the property of Krishna, it's the property of God, and He's given it for all the people and even all the different species, I'm going to interact with people in a much different way. So I'm keeping that in mind. But otherwise, everybody's my competitor. And if you're my competitor, then I make teams, and my team's goal is to beat your team. You know, not that competition can't be helpful, but there's healthy, just like if you have kids, right? There's healthy, happy competition when the kids are playing out back, and then you start hearing the change of the, the pitch of the conversation changes, and you gotta get out there quick, because, one kid picked up the baseball bat and whatever, like, hey, how did it break down to this? You're friends. So mommy or daddy's got to run out there, calm the whole situation down and say, come on, this is just a game, calm down, you love each other, make up, be nice to your sister, or your brother, whatever. But Krishna's saying the same message to us. It's kind of like, hey, calm down, don't think it belongs to you, it belongs to me. And of course, ultimately, he's trying to establish Yudhisthira on the throne. He will be successful because throne is, Duryodhana saying it's all mine. That's the whole thing in the Mahabharata, it's all mine. Krishna himself went and tried to negotiate. And famously, Duryodhana said, I won't give as much land to my cousins as you can stick a pin. It's mine. Right? And that's where all the problems come from. So it's my class is entitled to this, sociological class, or my race, or my culture, or my religion, or my nationality. And that's where Krishna's saying that's where the problems come from. So he's describing here that he creates different social divisions. There are different tendencies in human society. Just like now we know, there's we're talking about today, trying to do a lot of repairs from in the temple. And you read about this papers too, it's like they can't get a lot of work done today. Why? Because there's not enough laborers. Well, there's not enough laborers, everything else comes to grinding halt. And we all know sometimes, you go through periods of time where the economic system is not so good, and whatever the factory, even they talk about now, the supply chain is all messed up, right? They can't get stuff in. So that's kind of the duty of the Vaishya class, as Krishna described, the mercantile class. There's certain people supposed to make sure that we get the products we need. They have that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. If that's not working right, the rest of us suffer. Few controversies around the country these days, pro and con. The police, okay, and the government leaders. It's like, whoa, the government leaders is like Yudhisthira, right? When he was at the end of the Battle of Kurukshetra, he was saying, it's just been such a terrible thing. I can't take on this responsibility now to be king. He was grieving because it was such a grievous, battle. The war was so bad. But he was told by Bhishma and by Krishna and everybody else, it's your duty to protect the citizens. You're qualified to do this because you're selfless. The fact that you don't want the kingdom means you're qualified to rule the kingdom. Not a lot of folks coming up to that level these days. There's some, but there's not a lot.
Yeah.
There's not a lot. In the same way, the class of people primarily, focused on education and priestly services, all those kind of things. Satisfied and would become free from the tendency to exploit others. And that's what the Krishna consciousness movement's about, and that's what actually every authentic process of spirituality is about. This is cleansing the heart, cheto darpa marjanam. How do we cleanse our heart from the tendency of Krishna? We're all created by Krishna. I saw a really nice bumper sticker a few years ago. I haven't seen it recently. It said, God don't make junk. I really like that one. Because if we remember, everybody's connected to Krishna. Everybody's coming from Krishna. Everybody is unique and spiritual and has an inherent value. It's not like, well, God created me, I'm special, but you're second class. And that type of seeing things differently, it causes so many problems. And therefore, Prabhupada says here in this purport that the Vaishnava is highest. Why is the Vaishnava highest? Not that it's some sense of pride, but it's because a Vaishnava means a person who's seen these similarities between people and seen our shared humanity. And there's a nice verse from the Nectar Devotion, not verse, a couple of paragraphs are probably about this. He says, connected to this verse in Gita, the Krishna consciousness movement is so nice that there's no need of even designating oneself as Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, or Sannyasi. Let everyone be engaged in whatever occupation he has now. Simply let him worship Krishna by the result of his activities in Krishna consciousness. That will adjust the whole situation, and everyone will be happy and peaceful within this world. So that's the essential message when we read these verses talking about the natural divisions of human society, that we keep in mind that the essential principle of all of this is Krishna has given people different kinds of abilities because we, as I mentioned, there's problems with amount of labor, we all suffer. There's problems with mercantile people, we all suffer. All of those functions are essential. And the example is given in the Vedas, it's just like your body, there's a head, the stomach, the arms, the legs, you need all of those sections. And if any one of those sections starts thinking that one is more important than the other, then that's actually materialistic conception. And therefore even Lord Chaitanya himself, who's our Acharya, Krishna himself said, I'm not a Brahmana, I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaishya, I'm the servant to the servant to the servant to the servant to the servant. So someone may think, well, who's he? Well, he's not this. No, he's the servant to the servant. Someone knows they're the servant. Someone maybe know they're the servant to the servant. Someone may know they're the servant to the servant to the servant. You may say, but they don't know they're the servant. No, but they're the servant to the servant to the servant to the servant to the servant. I'm their servant. What a different world that would bring about. What a different world. So as devotees, it's important that we understand these things. We talk about jnana and vijnana. There's knowledge, and then there's application of knowledge. We know just like the Bhagavatam starts, one of the very first histories of the Bhagavatam, or what led to the Bhagavatam even being recited, was there was a Brahmana who thought he was a Brahmana, which meant he thought he was better than anybody else. Sringi, those who know the story. A little Brahmana boy, he felt his father had been offended by the king. He's thinking, I'm an intelligentsia class, you're just administrative class, we are higher than you, you have no right to act like this towards us, therefore I curse you. And then of course Maharaj Parikshit said, oh, this must be Krishna's arrangement, this is God's arrangement, and it ultimately was to recite the whole Bhagavatam. But it's described, that was the beginning of this age when this people in different social divisions started to think from the top, we're better than you. Right? And we live in a world that is full of, we're better than you. The whole world is in conflict with each other because we're better than you. I recently went, I was a little shocked. I mean, I guess I live in the East Coast, I'm too aloof in these things. I recently flew to St. Louis, visited the temple there, and I saw there was a pickup truck, and the guy had a bumper sticker on the back that said, guns are not meant for shooting ducks. Whoa. It's bad enough that somebody believes that, but they advertise it. I mean, okay, we don't shoot ducks, but we understand there are people that shoot ducks and deer and a whole lot of other stuff, so that's not really good according to our understanding. But to say no, guns are actually meant to shoot people. Okay, military situations, that's understood. This is a guy in a city. It wasn't like he was wearing a bumper sticker that said, I support the Marines because we're protecting them. That's different. He was making a statement, my guns are meant for shooting people who disagree with me. Now if you ask him, he'd say, oh, of course I don't mean that. What are you putting on your truck for? So that's the level of tension that's there is in there. Now we know there's, disclaimer, I personally know some devotee friends that like guns and go out and shoot target practice and all that. Not saying, making any kind of political statement in that sense. But the mentality that my power, my guns, whatever it is to control you or maybe to shoot you. Whoa, I was thinking, ooh, this is Kali Yuga. The age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So, we see within our own tradition, Sringi began the process because of this separation. I had experienced this week. We held the 7th annual Vaishnava Christian Dialogue, which is based in India, but it was online. And Gopal Gupta, some of you know, Professor Gupta, based in Naperville, Illinois now. He was giving a presentation on suffering, human and divine. That was the topic. And in his presentation, at one point, one of the persons who was Protestant, Indian Protestant, so at some point in time his family converted. And he was explaining something I never really caught on. He was talking about how as a Christian in India, the concept of karma was so badly abused. So badly abused. As he was explaining, as he'd experienced it, because by your karma, you are a lower caste or a lower social division or some other thing, and therefore that's your position. And he was explaining about how, couple of Christians were talking about how, I guess in India now there's a lot of, I don't follow things so closely in India, there's a lot of conception that anybody who is a Muslim or a Christian, you are the product of colonization, and therefore it's a political statement against us, the majority. And he was wrapping this all in as a Christian Indian, how people thinking this is our karma, therefore you're stuck in a certain position, and was therefore describing for Indian Christians in particular the concept of Jesus as what do they call it? Liberation theology. The essence of Jesus is to liberate us from social oppression. I was like, wow, I'd become a Christian too. If I was in India and felt I was oppressed, or anything else. So I bring this up because Gopal Hari said in this dialogue, representing Vaishnavism, he said, quote, karma is not a core principle for us. And this man almost fell out of his chair. We're all on Zoom, we're across the world, right? He was in Germany, Gopal's in Illinois. He was like, wait a minute, that's the essence of Hinduism, isn't it? And he said, well, we're Vaishnavas. It comes within the umbrella of Hindu traditions, Hindu culture. We're Vaishnavas, and for us, the principle is bhakti. It's not karma. It's not whether you're white or black or brown or male or female or highly educated or less educated, you're from India, you're from the West, or from a city, from the country. We don't care about that. I mean, part of the tension in America these days, right? It's like, I think the people sometimes in the, what they call the center of the country, they feel like the coast, they're so puffed up, they're so proud. It's like a class thing. It's crazy. There's just class divisions in whatever. But Gopal said, actually, that's not it for Vaishnavas. For us, it's about bhakti. What does it mean? It's about bhakti. It doesn't matter if you're young, like there's little kids walking around here. It doesn't matter if, and Prabhupada would say, Prabhupada loved that. He would say, these children, they're chanting Hare Krishna. They're making spiritual advancement. They come and offer them a flower, give them prasad, making spiritual advancement. So for us, it's about bhakti, which is very where we started with this verse. We're not the body, we're not white, we're not black, we're not young, we're not old, we're not women, we're not men, we're not this, we're not that. And there's no barriers. In our culture, there's no barriers. And there are tendencies left over from our past to make those kind of distinctions. And those distinctions need to be weeded out in the Hare Krishna movement. Prabhupada didn't see like that. There's so many wonderful stories. I mean, this one I told her before. Prabhupada, when he went to Africa the first time, short version, the devotees were saying, Prabhupada, the African people aren't so interested in Krishna consciousness. There's a lot of Indians here, we're just preaching to the Indian people. Prabhupada said, no, you're in Africa, you got to talk to the black people. And he ordered them, he said, you go rent a hall in a black neighborhood and we'll see what happens. So they rented a hall in a black neighborhood in town, and of course nobody showed up. I shouldn't say of course. As they predicted, nobody showed up. There's a few Indian people there. People from India lived in Africa. So Prabhupada said, start a kirtan and open the doors. So they opened the doors, they started a kirtan. In a few minutes, the place was full of people. Native people, black people, African people, chanting and dancing. Prabhupada said, this is what our movement is about. We go to Africa for the Africans and the Indians that live there too. We come to America for the Americans. We don't discriminate. Prabhupada, there was some exchanges where devotees said, Prabhupada, when there's women in the temple, it's hard for me to chant Hare Krishna. My mind is disturbed with lusty desires. Prabhupada said, then you go to the forest. And don't look at the monkeys. Right? Why? Because Prabhupada didn't want that kind of discrimination. So many examples like that. So we have to just emphasize this I'll close in a minute, that this is so much the essence of who we are. This is the gift we have to give. It's not just our theology and our culture and our philosophy that we keep it inside. But we see this is actually something, it's like if you're a doctor or a scientist, you discover some amazing miracle cure, you don't just give it to yourself and your family and then like let the world die, isn't it? You take it yourself, you get strong from it, you stop the disease, as we're trying to do within our own communities, but also that we share it. So that requires both jnana and vijnana, knowledge, and then we have to be able to apply it. And of course, we're not perfect, we're all making mistakes, but to be aware that these tendencies are there in human society, the tendencies are there within our society. We have to be strong in our Krishna consciousness to say, no, every person comes here has a full opportunity to become a devotee of Krishna. Every single person that comes here should have a full opportunity to practice Krishna consciousness. We don't discriminate, and when we do, we lost our connection with Krishna. And we lost our connection, especially with Lord Chaitanya, and especially with Srila Prabhupada. You know, we know even Prabhupada, the generation before Prabhupada, Prabhupada's spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was making disciples and followers from all different classes or castes in India. Even when they went to holy places, sometimes they locked the temple doors. This guy's bringing in low-class people, this sadhu. You know, and some would throw stones. That's the culture what he fought against. In the time of Lord Chaitanya had Muslim people from, you know, lower classes became followers, and people were opposed to him because of that. And he fought against it. So that's our history. We're fighters. Our history is we're fighters. We're not fighters on for political purpose or economic purposes. We're fighters for spiritualized social justice. That's the essence of this verse for us. So we have a few minutes left. I think 6:15-ish.
6:15 we have our tea.
Okay.
We do want to make one quick
Once we're
distribution
gonna-
announcement.
Okay. So no time for questions
I think
or
we have
comments.
one question.
I'll be around later on. One question?
Yeah, maybe.
Comment, a question? Vishnu Anutama Prabhu.
You're speaking about not differentiating between the castes. Is there any difference between the idea you're presenting and the idea of non-casteism that was presented by Mohandas Gandhi during the independence movement?
Yeah, summarizing. So in India, the historical movements also, for instance, Gandhi was saying there should be no classes. The difference is that we say, yeah, you have an ability to, you know, I got brahminical initiation. I'm not really so good at worshiping the deities all day long. I would climb the wall. I got to do something more active outside of that space. Some people are just so inspired and awakened to that. So you do that for Krishna. Some people like to manage, do that for Krishna. Some people want to make money, do that for Krishna. Some people have different propensities. So the difference is, I think, we're specifically emphasizing whatever your natural ability is. It doesn't mean you can only do one thing, but whatever thing or things you like to do. Like we came in the other night, there was a man in here making garlands. Washington, D.C. used these ladies making garlands. I said, wow, that's great, it's a man making garlands. Most men I know don't have the artistic sense to make garlands. It's wonderful. One of us got it right. I was like feeling really good about that. So whatever your talent is, do it for Krishna. And that way, no discrimination. Is that okay, Vishnu? Get up. Okay. That was my one question. Announcements. Okay, thank you all very much. A couple brief announcements.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Anutama Prabhu, for a wonderful talk. Very important principles that we learn, especially the principle of discrimination. Anutama Prabhu will be around the rest of the evening, as well as his wife on the group meeting. So if you have any questions or just like to get their association, please take advantage of it. At this time, we want to give our weekly book distribution announcement by Dr. Sean.
Hare Krishna devotees.
Hare Krishna.
For the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada, we were able to go out today in Rittenhouse Square in Center City, Philadelphia. There were, let me see here, there were 7 devotees. There was Anutama Prabhu, Dronacharya, Nilamuri, Ian, Mita, Anna, Bob, myself, my 2 daughters, and we were able to distribute a total of 38 books.
Oh. And if you're not really comfortable how to approach people with Prabhu's books, just go out and hang out with Sean's book. Sean's really, really good. It's kind of like just breaking down the barriers and approaching people, making friends, and that's really the most important thing. And just remind everybody also by HG Prabhu, who really is the modern majority book distribution. He makes the point, if you just go out, he tells everybody, if you just touch the pavement, your day's a success. You don't have to do anything more than that. Just put a couple books in your hands and touch the pavement, fantastic. If you don't do anything else the whole day, that's wonderful. So sometimes, again, the mind puts up all these barriers. The advice book just say, just touch the pavement. If you do anything else, if you want to talk to somebody, that's fine. Not required. So Sean's a real acharya in that.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to have Arti and Kirtan. Next, Kirtan will be led by His Grace Vishnu Prabhu.
God.